with another episode of PB Betting College Football Podcast here. Paisley, crazy week in college football. It feels like a year's worth of news and information has happened in just the last 3-4 days. It was also a long weekend with the games being played on Friday, a ton of games on Friday. There was NFL going on. We had a full slate Saturday. So just a crazy week. Cards were okay. I think you were slightly above or below 50%. I was slightly above at 9-6, but just a crazy week. We kind of have an idea now of what we think we do of what is going to be in the playoff next week. But at the end of the day, there's still like 3 or 4 teams that are right on the bubble. Conference champions are crazy. We'll get to all this, but like now Duke and the ACC's going on. We got all these coaching changes, Lane Kiffin. I mean, there's just a ton of information out there. But with all that being said, how was your weekend, Paisley?
Yeah, it was good. Nice time spent with family over the Thanksgiving holiday. So, watching the games in and out wasn't too much this week. So we're going to lightly go through those. And like we said, last game of the season, we finally made it to the end. We'll see what some of these teams shake out for the playoff picture. But for the results on the field, and we'll get to all the news and notes with the coaches because there's definitely a lot to update everybody on there. But yeah, not a lot of crazy upsets this week, but I think that almost created more now like question marks or chaos in the rankings and how they're going to go. Because I think if we would have had some chaos, it would have eliminated some teams and you could have easily been like, okay, that team's definitely out. But now they all kind of won. Now it's all kind of jumbled up there between like 8 and 13 or 14. Like you said, with Duke getting the tiebreaker in the ACC, now that throws a wrench. We could have 2 group of 5 teams potentially in. We'll do a little breakdown at the end and discuss some projecting some playoff stuff and talk big picture. And then we'll probably touch on the rankings on the next podcast. But yeah, not really a crazy upset-filled week, but now there's still a lot of questions that need to be answered going into the rankings in a couple days here.
One of those teams kind of kept themselves alive in the hunt, like Miami winning convincingly in Pittsburgh, like Vanderbilt winning convincingly in Tennessee. So just a lot of teams that were already on the bubble. And then, like you just said, like Alabama keep winning. They're, keeping themselves in. If they lost, they would have been out. So we have all these teams kind of sitting right on the edge. The auto bids are throwing a whole nother wrench into things. And then, yeah, like you said, we'll go over our slate quick. We'll talk about some of the top lines and the coaching searches and what's going to be changing there. We'll get into the game recaps. We'll try to do a little quicker this week on the recaps. Like you said, there wasn't a ton of, great games, a lot of one-sided affairs. And then at the end, we'll jump into the college football playoff, just kind of maybe an outlook of the rankings, maybe what to look for next week, what things could cause chaos. And then we'll close with the winners and losers. But with that being said, I had a decent week. I thought it was going to be better, actually. Went 9-6. I felt pretty good on my picks. However, I lost all of my locks. So I was 0-3 on the locks, but I still ended at 9-6, about 60%. So was happy there. I got the big win, to start on Friday with North Texas and Texas and also Georgia. All getting the cover for me. Really liked the Texas pick. I kind of said it on the preliminary, podcast last week that it was one that I just had a weird gut feeling that, this line was so low that Texas could just win this game outright. So, and ruin A&M's undefeated season. So that happened. Ohio State finally got it done. I was very hesitant on putting them on my card. I'm glad they did. They finally came through, beat Michigan, looked convincing doing it in the second half after kind of a little bit of a slow first quarter, but they were able to open things up later in the game and in rough weather too. Pitt, don't even want to talk about, totally whiffed on them. They just didn't show up. Miami clearly went there with a mission. They played like they want to be in the playoff. They definitely made things more interesting, I think, these last couple of weeks, looking convincingly, because there's not a lot that the committee could kind of pry them apart on and knock them down. So I think they're keeping themselves alive here in the hunt, but I just don't think there's enough spots for them right now. We'll get into that, but nonetheless, convincing win, but they will not be in the ACC championship, but they dominated Pittsburgh. Oregon got it done, kind of under the radar game, Oregon-Washington. Didn't really talk about it too much last week, but it was definitely a trap game, but Oregon showed up prepared, didn't get upset. They're definitely in the playoff now. They don't even have to play in the Big Ten championship, so it kind of works out for them in a strange way. Might get a home game and get the week off, so not bad for them. Under in the Wisconsin Minnesota, I love that pick. I should have locked that one. That there's no points in that one. It was like 17-7 or 17-10 or something. Just horrible offense. Great way to close out the season for those two teams. Minnesota did get the win though. Got Duke. I got Florida. I liked Auburn. It was a weird game. They kind of looked bad early, came all the way back, had a chance to win. That receiver fumbled the football in the last drive. I don't know if Auburn would have scored there. It looked like they were going to score. It would have really caused, that would have been a huge win for them, but they were not able to cover there. And the line was pretty low, 5.5. So lost by 7 there. Penn State won a thrilling game against Rutgers. I'm not sure. I think the graphic I saw, that was the most amount of points I think Rutgers scored in all of their meetings versus Penn State in the last 10 years, like 30 points. So just a crazy offensive game. Paisley, I saw you had the over, so that was a great pick on your part.
No sweat.
No sweat there. That game, that was just ridiculous scores. VT blown out. Just totally missed on that one. And Boston College ended my slate with a nice BC win. They dominated Syracuse. They covered. So that was a good slate. So I end my regular season 9-6 on the week. Unfortunately, below 50%. I'll give one more shot here in the conference champions to try to get this thing back to 50%. But closing out at 99 wins, 109 losses, and 7 push. So just about 48 or whatever percent. But up and down week, and I guess not too bad. Other than the locks just continue to be a disappointment.
Yeah, the locks have been frustrating all around here on the page, but that Penn State game might have been the most exciting game on Saturday. That was a fun one to watch. It was like an arena football game, back and forth. Like I was not expecting that many points, but that's why I also had the over. But yeah, what happened to the Penn State defense? We'll get that situated. Hopefully, there'll be a whole overhaul going into next year. But yeah, run through my card here. We'll start with the wins. Had Air Force on Friday. They looked good. Thought the number was too low. Got a nice win to end their regular season. North Texas keeps covering again. They are my favorite team. Talked about them on the preview pod, I think, last week. Just absolutely destroyed Temple. They love blowing out bad teams, but now they got a tough game against Tulane. Saw that number, Tulane +3. It's going to be hard to go against my North Texas, but I'm going to have to take a deeper dive on that one in the conference championships. Utah State, they were my underdog 2 of the week. That line was 3.5, came all the way down to 1.5 right before game time. And they were up about 10 or 14 points like late in the second half. And then they somehow blew the lead, lost by 1. So we actually got the cover in that one, which is crazy, but we did not get the outright money line, which was very unfortunate because they were leading most of the second half. Arizona in the Arizona State game, they controlled that game, won that by a couple scores, so that was nice there. Houston +3, talked about that also in the preview pod. Thought they should have been the favorites. They really controlled that game from the jump. Talked about the Penn State over. You talk about Boston College. That was a nice win too. Talk about 2 garbage programs going at it with BC and Syracuse, and just thought BC was a little less trash than Syracuse going into that one, so that was a nice call by both of us there. Missouri had the nice win over Arkansas, a little dicey early, but then they stepped it up there late. Yonder in the Minnesota-Wisconsin game, like you said, a lot of snow in that game too. There was a lot of snow, and like legit couple inches of snow, not even like little dustings in a lot of the Midwest games, especially there in Minnesota and Illinois. I'm not sure if we both picked that game, but there was a lot of snow in that one in Champaign. Florida, we were both on. That was a nice call at home. I just thought Florida State was broken, and Florida really controlled that game, so it was nice they got a win there. The over did sneak over by a point in the Alabama-Auburn game with that late touchdown by Alabama. So, again, numbers are very key. 47, 48, 49 are little key numbers in college football. So that's why 45, 46 was kind of a dead zone there. And like you said, we were both on Auburn in that one, and I think they deserved to cover. They were kind of in that game from the second quarter on. They had a terrible start to the game, went down 17-0, but then really battled back. I thought they really had their chances, but kind of threw up on themselves late. But again, got to give credit to Alabama. They sneak out another win, but don't look super convincing doing so. Will they get exposed by Georgia in the SEC championship? We'll definitely break that down when the time comes later in the week. And then Cal, +13, getting the win outright, which was crazy over SMU and kind of shattering their hopes of a nice run there in the ACC at the end. So that was a nice win. Was not expecting them to get the win outright. I thought they'd keep it close. So that one was maybe one of the biggest shockers of the weekend, actually, with not a lot of shockers out there. Then some of the losses, Georgia Tech. No points scored in that one, which made no sense to me inside the dome. I didn't get to watch that game entirely, but just seemed like it was sluggish out the gate. San Diego State also had a nice opportunity to win and be in the Mountain West Championship. Now it's Boise UNLV, which was rinse and repeat the last 2 years. And those teams had really bad seasons. And they find themselves back in the championship. So really disappointing for San Diego State there. Texas A&M, we'll break that. I'm done with them. I always had a lot of eggs in the basket there. Really loved them. We went head to head on that one. And you got me on that one, Case, and the over too. I don't know what happened to that offense. Defense actually played okay, but that was very disappointing on both fronts on Friday night. I was very disappointed. And then even more disappointing probably was the Pitt +7. I think we were hyping that one up a lot. We wanted that to happen. It would have been so nice to see the Miami fans and all that crumble down, but now they'll still be talking for another week or two until the final release of the rankings and saying they should be above Notre Dame and all these other teams. But they, like you said, did their job. We'll break that down a little more, but didn't look like they're a top 5 or top 10 team in that game too. And want to also point, they did score with 30 seconds left with their starters in, and they were up 24 to push it to 31. So they like to do that in these games to make their final score. I think that's literally like the 3rd or 4th time they've done that. South Carolina too, shout out Jackpot. That was disappointing. Didn't show up against Clemson, so that was very disappointing there for South Carolina. UTSA, got a shout-out Army. They got me on that one. I think they won the game outright. UTSA just didn't show up. Wake Forest, got to give credit to Duke. That was a nice call by UK, so now they're going to be playing for AC Championship. Virginia Tech, I feel like we bet them the last couple of weeks, and they just absolutely floundered, didn't even show up against Miami and UVA here. That one was out of hand early. I think it was 24-0. Maryland, don't even want to talk about that one. That was a bad pick. UNC, not even close, and Nevada, not even close. So definitely some of the losers there to end the day were not great. But yeah, definitely the biggest disappointments of the day were probably Pitt and Michigan too. I forgot to touch on that game. We'll break that down, but got off to a great start and then got outscored like 29-3, I think, the rest of the game. So overall, like you said, not the best day, finishing on the season now 156, 159-4, and 16-16-1 on locks. So keeping it very consistent there, Case, right at 50%. But that's not what we strive for. We strive for better. So we got to be a little bit better, hopefully get some wins. Conference championship season, but, we're going to keep grinding here and keep trying to give you guys winners.
Good news is, we still got a ton of football, all the bowl games, which, there could be money to be made on those games if you do some research, see which players are playing, see, the coaching changes, which programs have momentum. So definitely we'll be dedicating some time, I'm sure, in the next couple of weeks to some of those games. And then, of course, we got all the championship games next weekend and then the playoffs. So getting right into it. But yeah, with that being said, we may as well just jump kind of right into the, some of the top lines of the week. I mean, Ole Miss is definitely the biggest, I guess, story going on right now in college football. It's kind of just sucked out all the media from all these other coaching hirings. Of course, if you're just listening, you probably don't know this, but I'm a big Penn State guy. They seem to be one of the only teams that have yet to hire their coach. There was a few names that I think they were swinging for that didn't pan out, so they kind of are going back to the drawing board. Or their athletic director seems to just kind of be doing his own thing there. But Lane Kiffin, LSU, Paisley, interested to hear your kind of preliminary thoughts on. I mean, it's kind of just crazy how the whole situation unfolded. I don't really have to repeat the whole thing. I'm sure if anyone you're listening to this, you're probably very familiar with it, know it all. But Lane Kiffin out. Ole Miss said, you can't coach the playoff, which makes sense from their point of view. If you're going to another team and that decision was made, I mean, you can't blame Ole Miss for doing that. He kind of, who knows what's true and not true. The reports are that he told his staff that if they want to join him next year, they got to go with him to LSU today. And there were some reports that no other coach or just one receiver coach went with them. So Lane Kiffin goes to LSU. Ole Miss promotes their defensive coordinator. All this unfolding while Ole Miss is sitting right there with a chance to win a national championship.
Yeah, it's crazy. We've never seen anything like this, and that's where it's going to be very uncharted territories here to see what the committee does, see how the team responds, losing a head coach while you're going to the playoffs. That hasn't happened in maybe any sport ever. So it's going to be, are they still going to be buttoned up? Are they still going to be run the same stuff? being as, poised as they were, or is it just going to be a mess? And is it just going to fall off the rails? So I think they'll play hard. I think they're going to prove, we could win without Lane. I think those players are going to take it a little personally, and the coaching staff too. I get the move to LSU. Honestly, it's a great job. We all know that. It has the potential to be a really, staple job, top 3 job, maybe the best job in the country. So it is hard to turn that down. And they were obviously going to give him a ton of money. So it was hard for Lane. He has that personality. We joke about a lot on this podcast, but he is kind of aloof. He's kind of, doesn't really stay true to his word. So, and if I'm on LSU, I don't even know how long he's going to stay there. So it's going to be very interesting to see his saga and what he does here. But you knew it was going to be messy. You knew it was going to be all over the place. But I'm very interested to see now how he takes on that LSU job. The pressure is going to be on right away, obviously. And that's why I just hate this whole thing in college football with, does he have we have to fix it where they could finish the season and then we could deal with all this coaching stuff for all the recruiting after the season, because this cannot be happening. I feel really bad for the players on Ole Miss. Let's see how it turns out. But yeah, if they get routed in their first round game, and it would have been a difference if he was there, it's just really, I feel bad for the players at the end of the day that put in a lot of time and effort. I get why Lane did it. I get why you had to leave early. You got to get a jump on recruiting and the transfer portal. But this is some really uncharted territory. So you look at, we'll talk about a little bit, maybe the North Texas coach that's going to Oklahoma State. And he said he's staying at North Texas until the end of the season there. So I feel like there's always avenues to do it. I know there's some reasons to go one way, some reasons to go another, leaving early, stay with your team till the end. But it was definitely a weird situation from the start, very messy. And that's going to be a fun matchup next year. We were talking about that LSU does go to Ole Miss. So that's going to be a really fun one. But Lane kind of likes being the villain. He likes being in the news. It was kind of weird. He wasn't signed that extension, so you knew he was probably going to go. But Ole Miss fans are definitely not happy. I'm kind of rooting for them. I hope they do good here in the playoffs and kind of right the ship here. But maybe the grass isn't always greener. Case we'll find out next year. But that LSU job, as we know, Brian Kelly, it's if you don't win right away, and Alabama with Kalen DeBoer, the pressure's on, and that pressure could really turn something. But they do have the riches. You could get all these great recruits, great transfer portal. So I know I get both sides, and I get why he did it. But it's going to be popcorn material for next year. It's going to be a fun time.
Yeah, you get to a lot of good points, and you're right. I do think one part of Lane Kiffin does like being the villain, no matter who. He probably will never admit that, but it's just kind of comes with his personality. Just online how he is in interviews. I mean, look, is LSU a better job? Probably. I mean, they clearly have said, they are willing to do anything to win a national championship. It's one of the best, storied programs. They've had a lot of success just in recent years. I'm gonna have a bold, prediction. I have a feeling when this is all said and done, years down the line, who knows if this PB podcast Paisley will be ongoing at this time, but I think it's going to be backfire on him. I think he had a chance at Ole Miss. I like Lane Kiffin. I mean, I think he's great for the sport. He's a character. I don't care one way or the other, but I just think he had a real chance. He was already going into year 5, year 6 at Ole Miss. I think would have been 6 next year. He really could have built himself like a real legacy. In 10, 15 years, if you remember Lane Kiffin, he could be Mr. Ole Miss, just like Nick Saban, Alabama, all these other schools, where I think this move, I mean, he better win at LSU. He has to win. He is no more. It needs to happen now if he wants to really solidify himself and become an elite coach and someday in the Hall of Fame type thing. He's gonna have to win a national championship, and to your point, he's gonna have to do it quick because LSU show that they don't have a lot of patience. They expect to win pretty immediate. So if he doesn't get it figured out there in 2 years, maybe 3 years, I'm talking make a run for the national title, I do think it will backfire. I really would have liked to see him, stick at Ole Miss. It would have been cool, but I do think everybody in the country is rooting for them at this point after just the last 7 days. I think we all knew he was leaving too. It really was no surprise. We even talked about it a week ago. But that's gonna be my take. I'm basing it off of. I just think he had sports changing. I think Ole Miss was giving him a lot of resources. He could do what he wants there. I mean, now in Louisiana, he's got to, he has to answer to some more people. The governor, getting involved down there with the sports. the whole board of directors there at LSU. So I do think there's going to be some added pressure. So I hope that it wasn't all on the money here for Lane Kiffin, but we'll see as time will tell us, if it's ultimately the right decision. But definitely going to be exciting next year. Adds a whole new storylines. I can't wait for that game, already next year. So it's going to be wild. But definitely rooting for Ole Miss here in the final, month of the season.
Yeah, and just one last point, because I remember he made a comment. He's been kind of making comments or jabs at Ole Miss the whole time, and that's his personality. But it seems like he wasn't like truly happy there the last 2 or 3 years. I know he rubs people the wrong way, so maybe that was more on his part. But I remember him saying about the Ole Miss LSU game actually in the middle of the season. He's like, every time we go to LSU, they schedule at night, and then every time they come here to Ole Miss, they schedule at 3:30. And he's like, what's up with that? Like, and it's just kind of that notion of like LSU just is obviously a much larger brand, so you get all the favors or the upticks and stuff like that, where Ole Miss just maybe wasn't getting treated in that spotlight or in the SEC like he wanted to be treated, even though he built that program up and they've been really good. But, like, you know what I mean? And even the infrastructure of the stadium, like LSU, Ole Miss, huge difference. So it's like maybe he just wanted something, or he just was getting sick of just the smaller brand. But I love when guys stick it out and love that. I think Kurt Signe is a great example at Indiana, especially in today's day and age, where you could build from nothing and you could build a program and win at a high level. And we'll see what Indiana does here later in the playoffs in the Big Ten. But if they go in and beat Ohio State, well, then why can't anybody go to any school and have much success? So I get both sides of it. It's a tough situation, but I'm with you. I think this might have the lookings of really crashing and burning, because I don't know who would be fit for the LSU job, but it seems like one that is very, very hot and very hot seat material. And now you bring in a fiery personality like Lane Kiffin. So if it goes good, it could be really good. If it goes bad, this could burn up in smoke really, really quick because of the dueling personalities here.
Yep, 100%. And then, so Ole Miss riding with their defensive coordinator, Pete Golding, going there. There was a few other hires. I'm actually excited about some of these hires. John Summerall, the guy from Tulane, going to Florida. Alex Golesh going to Auburn. They were kind of two guys in the hunt for those jobs. I think it makes sense. They have experience in the South. They're familiar with recruiting in, in Florida and Alabama and those states. There was a couple, surprising that were a little that I wasn't expecting. That Tavita Pritchard from Stanford, I had never really heard of him until this morning, and I looked and I saw that he was friends with Andrew Luck, so I guess that makes sense. So I guess we'll see what he could do. We obviously know about the James Franklin to Virginia Tech. You mentioned Eric Morris going to Oklahoma State, and obviously I think it's different for him versus like Ole Miss, because Oklahoma State and North Texas, they're not rivals. They have nothing. They're not in the same conference. So I think that's the main reason why he's able to stick it out there for the playoff, or at least the remainder of the season. Ryan Silverfield, Memphis to Arkansas. That's an interesting hire. I know some people, it was on the short list for a possibility for Arkansas, but to see them actually pull the trigger. So it's going to be fun to watch these guys next year, just what they could do. From having big success in the group of five to going on to top 10, top 15 jobs around the country. So will be exciting to watch over the next year.
Yeah, I think it's great when you dip into the group of five or teams and coaches that are, could be just as good as some of these, Power Four conferences. I think John Summerall, like you said, slam dunk hire. He's been doing such a good job at Tulane. We mentioned him before at Troy, back-to-back years winning the Sun Belt, and they look dominant. Now he moved up to Tulane. Had really two good seasons there, was in the conference championship last year, in the conference championship this year. Like, he's a really, really good head coach. Alex Golesh had a great year with USF, obviously, this year with upsetting Florida. I think Auburn got a great hire there. So I'm really excited to see Florida and Auburn now be taken a little more seriously and have a coach that, really wants to be there and is going to put a lot of time and energy into it. Ryan Silverfield, I've just been hearing mixed things about him. I just feel like he, has the Memphis brand and stuff, but not really the best candidate, or I think that was not Arkansas's first choice. So I'm going to be interested to see how that plays out. I'm really excited for Oklahoma State. That's a program that I think me and you would agree, Case, and Virginia Tech too, that these are programs that should be good, and we like seeing them in the national spotlight. So now they get a serious head coach. I really like Eric Morris, what he's been doing at North Texas. Obviously, I've been talking about them all year. So I think it's really fun to see some of these bottom conference Power Four teams now that can maybe move up. Not saying it's going to be an Indiana type move, but at least just be taken a little more seriously, maybe move up to the middle, and then maybe be contending, because it's really fun when Oklahoma State is rolling or is a little bit better. They were just so dreadful the last couple of years under Gundy there. And then, one that definitely was the first headline was James Franklin to Virginia Tech. I think that's a very solid move for Virginia Tech too. Just bringing in a grown-up, bringing in these people like we're talking about in some of the bottom conference standings. Now you could be taken a little more seriously. Now they could really elevate your program, raise the floor a little bit so that the bottom is not, an 0 for 8 conference schedule throughout the year. So I think it's going to be really exciting. I think some of these schools made some really nice hires with all the coaching vacancies going on. And I think you're going to see an uptick. And, I think you could see Florida coming back to the map very soon. You can see Auburn now. I think they've been competing, even with Hugh Freeze and the struggles he had. I really like what Oklahoma State did, and I'm really excited to see what Virginia Tech and James Franklin's going to do.
Yeah, and a lot of those, conferences like, the ACC with Virginia Tech and Stanford, and then the Big 12 with Oklahoma State. These are wide open conferences. There's no clear cut, lead. So definitely with how the portal is and recruiting, and there's an opportunity to turn some of these programs around quickly. But I think that's also comes with that adds pressure, that adds shorter leashes. So we could see both sides of that. But we'll definitely be a different world next year. But definitely the storyline, of course, with Ole Miss and their situation. So with that, might as well get right into the recaps. We'll kind of do it a little quicker this week, just because I know the most exciting stuff is, of course, getting into the playoff, getting into these rankings, getting into the actual the meat here in the last week, heading into conference championship. But start with the rivalry. It was a great week. I mean, there was a lot of we do this segment, winners and losers. I could probably add like 12 winners of the week, just because there was a lot of positives for some of these teams. But Ole Miss getting it done with the storylines revolving Lane Kiffin, dominating fashion over Mississippi State, 545 yards to 440. So Mississippi State had some success moving the ball, but the scoreboard, it just never really felt close. 21-13. Ole Miss they took the lead, went up 24-13, never looked back. And then I think Mississippi State scored a little bit in the fourth quarter. But Mississippi State had a decent season. Unfortunately, they didn't get to a bowl game after they were really close in some of these games. They got the early win over Arizona State. They've shown some signs of positivity. Their team's definitely better than it was last year, despite going 1-7 in SEC play. I think they were a little bit of a surprise, even though the record doesn't show it. And then, Ole Miss right there in the driver's seat, going to have a new coach. Who knows what to expect, but they get the rivalry win. They're going to be in the playoff, and everything is still in front of them. But no real shock here. But Ole Miss closes it out against the rival 38-19.
Yeah, I think that's a good start with Mississippi State. Like some of these teams, you look at their records, you're like, probably terrible, but that's what we do here on these betting shows. Like you got to dig a little deeper. And I think Mississippi State actually had a good season. Like you said, had some really close calls that could have been some big wins, just kind of looking big picture. Obviously, the Texas game is huge. That would have been a program-changing win. Looking back to that Tennessee game that was a little fluky at the end and some missed calls. Lost that game by 7 at home. So they're showing they can compete. And like you said, it takes some time maybe to build these programs up. So I think they're on the right track. I think they're very close. Even in this game against Ole Miss, they were moving the football, like you said, had a ton of yards. Just had some, red zone blunders. Maybe some, I thought one time they kicked a field goal and they should have went for it on a 4th and short. Knowing the game state, knowing you don't have a great defense, you're going to have to score a ton of points. So, that's the difference. They just got to clean up those little mistakes to take them to the next level and be an elite program. But they're definitely on the right track. So got to give Mississippi State credit there. And that backup quarterback who came in, the backup, but he started the game for Blake Shapen. He was looking good. Like he was looking athletic. He was running around. He's a young, raw talent. So maybe they have something there to build off of for next year. So definitely looking to project into next season if you're not making bowl games and stuff. And the only takeaway from Ole Miss, I thought, was that offense is really hard to stop. Like Chambliss still can't get over. He's a D2 kid now coming into the D1 stage here and really lighting it up and playing some really good football. Even had a couple throws he missed downfield that could have been easy touchdowns. They could even score more. But their running back is very elite. They run the ball at a high level. They could throw the ball deep. They could throw it short. Chambliss could take off and run. So that offense is really hard to stop. But the defense is where they have their questions, and that's going to be what maybe hurts them. They've shown they could win in these, shootout type games, but then like Georgia, one mistake or two, now you're losing by, 44-41 or something like that. So I'm excited to see what this team does, obviously with the Lane Kiffin news, but that offense is really elite, but they really it's going to be matchup dependent to see if they could win and maybe cover a game because that defense is a little leaky.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Also for Ole Miss, and because of the SEC, so top heavy, there were actually four teams that were 7-1 in conference. So Ole Miss doesn't go to the SEC championship, but we've seen it last year. That could be a good thing.
Yeah.
You'll have the week off. You're going to get a home game. It looks like by the way the rankings are. So they have some time to figure out. I think their game plan here with the coaching changes, and that home game will mean a lot. So will definitely help. I think last year the home teams were 4-0 that weekend, that second week. So keep that in mind. But yeah, Ole Miss closed it out great. We'll see if their defense comes back to hurt them here. I think, like you said, that's been kind of a flaw all season long, but they get the win 38-19. And Mississippi State, I think, going in the right direction. We'll see what they could do next year. And then going right into another rivalry game that we just kind of mentioned, Georgia going against their rival Georgia Tech, non-conference game. Game that the result is not surprising here, but the score definitely is. Very low scoring game. Georgia Tech was up 3-0 for like partway through the second quarter, and then it was like 3-3. Not a ton of yards, only 260 total yards by Georgia, 250 total yards by Georgia Tech. Same thing in this game where I never felt like Georgia Tech was going to win this game, but the score was close. They covered, and Georgia kind of was just able to grind them out. Time of possession, they dominated 35 minutes to 25 minutes, and they also get the win. They're in the SEC championship. They stamped their ticket last week, but over the rival Georgia Tech, and got to be disappointed if you're Georgia Tech for just how the last few weeks went. Kind of play your way out of the playoff, and then a big opportunity on national stage to get redemption after last season's crazy game against Georgia, and you completely fall short here, 16-9.
Yeah, I think Georgia Tech, starting on that side, very disappointed what happened last week at Pitt. They knew they really couldn't do anything. That was their Super Bowl, really, to get to the AC championship. But on the Georgia side, they do this a couple games a year, and they did it the last 2 weeks now, even going back to that Charlotte game where they really know their opponent and they just shut everything down and don't really play. Now, can they flip that switch? I don't know if they're that good of a team to do that. So it's going to be very interesting to see what they do in the SEC championship this week against Alabama. And it's funny how all through all the chaos, Texas A&M looking good, Ole Miss, and we're right back to Georgia, Alabama in the conference championship again this year. But I'm looking at this right case, 70 yards passing by Georgia. That's not great against the Georgia Tech defense that we know is horrendous. So I just don't love teams that do that. Not that you have to go, balls to the wall and win by 70 like Indiana does every single week. But this one was a little shocking that it was this clunky, and they could have fooled around. They could have got a loss, and then still would have been set up maybe. In the SEC standings to get to the SEC championship and still would have been the playoff hunt. But this one was a little too close for comfort. They really didn't get off the mat in this one. This is kind of two sleepy spots in a row. Now you got to go play Alabama in the SEC championship. So we'll see how that one shakes out. A team that already beat them when they kind of were sleepwalking through a couple quarters in that game at home. So not feeling super confident about this Georgia team as I was maybe about 3-4 weeks ago when they were really ascending and playing good football. So let's see now if they could turn on the Jets again and play good next week in the conference championship. But this was definitely a little troubling sign. Not everything, but definitely a little something here.
Yeah, it is funny though how after what a crazy year it was, all these top SEC teams, or Texas preseason number one, Ole Miss right there, A&M undefeated like all season long.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're back to the same Alabama Georgia game. It just seems like it happens every year. But yeah, it's a good point. Georgia also crazy that they're up to number 3, like in the AP poll. Like I still don't consider Georgia like that elite team. I don't compare them. Like I think Ohio State beats this team like handily. Like I don't know if it's just some of my bias or if it's I really just not fully sold there. I guess it just shows though how many like teams once we get past Ohio State, it's just kind of this group of like jumbled of like 8-9 teams that I think anybody could beat anyone right behind Ohio State. So we'll see how it all plays out. But yeah, we'll see what Georgia could do. Chance to rematch against Alabama. So I'm sure they're looking forward to that to win the SEC.
Yeah, and I think we'll see it in the conference championship too, already looking at some lines, but I think in the playoffs too, maybe disregarding some of the group of 5 teams that get in, if they do, there's going to be a lot of close lines. Like I think it's going to be 3, 4, 5 points and less, and all these, to your point, like these teams are not really separating themselves. So it's going to be very interesting to see. I think I already looked at Georgia, Alabama's at like 1.5, basically a pick 'em. So it's going to be some really tightly contested spread games, at least going forward, I think from now until the end of the season.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of close spreads. I was kind of looking at some of the early lines, so that's going to be interesting to watch. Moving on, another SEC game, Texas 27, Texas A&M 17. This one, Texas just thrown some gas here, I think, at the College Football Playoff Committee this final week to see if anything could happen with them. I think they're safely out at this point. 3 losses. We haven't seen yet a 3-loss team get in. Of course, they got a really good win. They're ranked, I think, 16th or 17th, so I'm sure they'll move up. We'll see if the committee gives it any weight, but I still fully expect them to be behind, Miami, behind Vanderbilt. But Texas looked good. They played. They're probably one of their best games all year. 397 total yards. They didn't turn the ball over. Played a clean game. Arch Manning played all right, but no turnovers is the biggest thing. And then A&M offense just was really kind of the surprise here. They just could not get anything really going. None of those huge explosive plays. Marcel Reed turned the ball over 2 times, and Texas was just able to out-tough them. Rivalry game, got the win. It would have been huge for A&M. I don't think they've ever had an undefeated regular season, so got to be a little bit disappointed there. Especially because you're 11-0 going into your biggest game. The Texas A&M Texas game's a huge, rivalry, even when both these teams were in the Big 12. So got to be disappointed if you're A&M, but you can't let it, sink the ship here because you're still right there. You're going to be in the playoff. Cannot win the SEC, but you should still, host a home game. I'm assuming once we get these rankings out on Tuesday, we'll have an official idea. But nonetheless, Texas looked good. They're 9-3. They're probably still out. I would assume they definitely are, but they made things interesting here and looked, pretty good. I don't know where this Texas team was all season, but they get the win over the rival, 27-17.
Yeah, I got to give a lot of credit to Texas off the top. I just, like you said, I don't know where this team has been. Maybe I think the most inconsistent team of the season so far, like just from going back all the way to week 1 till now. They definitely showed a lot of improvement. But then they showed some depth where it was like they easily could have lost Kentucky and Mississippi State, who were bottom feeders in the SEC. But then they played up and could beat one of the top teams in the SEC and Texas A&M and actually look at doing it so pretty convincingly. The defense was hot and cold. They gave up 40-some to Arkansas, but then they shut down this offense. So it's just very interesting to see this team. And then Steve Sarkisian, I know he's trying to make his case, and I know that's what they do. And they're trying to be like, it's a tragedy if they get let out or left out of the playoff. But just save it, bud. Like, it's just, you have been so up and down. It's not like you were great all season, lost a couple super close games. Their resume is impressive when you look at it. Like now with this Texas A&M win, their one loss out of conference is to Ohio State, first game of the year. So it's tough. And I get what he's saying. Like, we scheduled Ohio State, we should get rewarded for that. I agree with that. But it's just a little too cloudy. And I think you got to take the whole season as a totality. Like, people just can't get out of their heads that Kentucky and Mississippi State game. And, even some of those other games that they look bad, the Florida game, they barely competed in that one. And Florida's not having the best season ever. So, I don't think it's just one game. I know that Ohio State game was good, Steve, but, you got to look at everything from the totality of the season. I would agree. I think they're safely out, but still really a nice win for them. Still nice that they showed some fight. And then on the Texas A&M side, like, this is troublesome. This was probably either the first or second most shocking result for me, at least, of the weekend, and just the way it happened, where they really just got held down. We talked about the Texas A&M defense not being that great. Got run all over in this game too, for 250, I think, by the Texas, or 218, which is definitely going to be troublesome and something to look at. So really going to be interested to see these matchup dependent playoff pictures, because if they run into a team that likes to run the football, that could kind of slow down their offense, kind of built like a Texas roster type. I think Texas A&M could be in for a first-round upset potentially. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out. But this was definitely very concerning if I'm a Texas A&M fan, just to see how great they started. They had some of those blunders. They had that shootout against Arkansas, like we talked about. They had that miraculous comeback against South Carolina. So they would have lost the South Carolina game. They lose this one. And then people are now bringing up the Notre Dame game, obviously, with the penalty, the last play of the game. That could easily have been a loss. So, undefeated season now, when you look at it, really could have been 3 losses overall. So I'm kind of with you. And I really like this Texas A&M team, but I kind of sold all my stock after this one now, Case. I'm not going to be backing them as heavily going forward. Really going to depend on the matchup. I think they could still win in a shootout type style, but they're going to have the right matchup. I really thought they could break into those top 3 teams and really be maybe close to Ohio State, but I think they're really coming down the standings here and really being more closer to like a 7, 8, 9 seed. So going to see what seed they get, what position they get. Hopefully, if they host a home playoff game, that'll obviously help their chances, but not a good end to the season these last couple of games, so very worrisome if I'm an Aggies fan.
Yeah, and that's part of why I liked Texas. I was leaning Texas mainly because if you do look at the full season of A&M, they were kind of up and down at times. They were 11-0. They were ranked 3 coming into the week, but you mentioned that South Carolina game. They were just getting the absolute doors blown off there in that one until they came storming back late. Also, the Arkansas game that not a lot of people are talking about, that 45-42 high-scoring affair. It really took a lot to win that game. The Auburn game, too, very ugly. They win that game 16-10. The Notre Dame, like you mentioned, a 4th down play. So there were a lot of, this is not a team that has just been dominating, their way to every victory. So I agree. I think this Texas and Texas A&M, I think that game, if they played 10 times, I really think it might be like a 5-5, 6-4 like split. I don't think there's a huge gap between these teams. I don't think A&M is that much like better than them is kind of what I'm trying to say, just because of their record all season. And then, to Steve Sarkisian's point, it is interesting. And I don't know if there's any right or wrong answer. And what I'm going to say is a hypothetical anyway. But if Texas didn't play Ohio State week 1 and they played like whatever, North Texas or, worse than that, like Western Kentucky, whoever, if they just played a group of 5 and then they go 10-2 with this win, how would you put that 10-2 versus Vanderbilt's versus, well, they beat Vandy, so they'd be probably ahead of Vandy. Then how would you put it against Miami at 10-2, some of these other 10-2 teams? It is interesting. Will that Ohio State loss be a reason why they end up getting left out? I don't know. And we really, there's no way to tell what the committee thinks. I think Texas probably would benefit more, though, if they didn't play Ohio State just this year specifically, because they were the preseason number 1. So they were already had a little bit of a longer leash. Like they probably could have lost. If they lose 2 games, maybe they fall from 1 to 10, not 3 games, they're going to go 1 to 15. I don't know. It's an interesting point. It's there's no right or wrong answer. The sport's not black and white. We're going to see that, I think, a week from now. I think you're going to have a lot of fan bases really upset, if they're out. Specifically Miami, if they're out and Notre Dame's in, well, I'm sure you basically won't hear the end of that one also. So a lot of things to shake out, but definitely interesting situation that Texas is trying to make here the last week of the season.
No, that's a great big picture question. We could have a whole episode just on college football playoff and what's right, what's wrong with it. But that's a great point. Like, why not just schedule a FCS team and then do that? I'm not a fan of that. I like seeing the big time games. That Texas Ohio State game is so hyped, and we love seeing that. But it does make you think, if I'm an AD, why should I be scheduling these games? But then it also goes the opposite way, where would Texas even be ranked that high with the Ohio State loss? Now, I think that's a tough one. Let's say Miami, for example. Everyone wants to clamor the Notre Dame game. Oh, don't play it next year. Miami would not even be close to top 25 if they didn't beat Notre Dame. So the only reason you're up that high is because you beat us and beat Notre Dame when they were ranked in the top 10. So it goes both ways. So don't think that, now don't play these games, because then that is the gamble you take. But then if you win, well, now you have that great chip, and now you could be ranked so high off the start. And then if not, well, then your conference games really do mean everything. So, just take Miami's resume, and if they don't have the Notre Dame win, where would you rank them? Like they maybe be outside the top 25. So sometimes it does help you when you do get the win. Obviously, it sucks when you lose. But, and that's where it's so 50-50. It's very opinionated, and that's where it's tough with these committee rankings and everything, because it's just all debating and going back and forth. But definitely a great topic to discuss.
Yeah, and I don't think it benefits all teams equally. Like I do think, if you're in the ACC and you play a weaker conference like that, you need that game to help you. But if you're a Texas and you're already playing, 5 SEC ranked teams, and it's like, I don't know if it may have backfired for them this year. And I don't know either. And I agree. I'd love to see the big games. It is a situation that, teams and schools have to decide on if it's beneficial to them, which we'll see, yet to be determined. But So that was Texas A&M, Ohio State, Michigan. Ohio State really just kind of dominated this game in the second half. I know early on it was interesting. I saw the interception. Michigan goes up 6-0. When they kicked that field goal after that interception, I felt like I had a bad taste in my mouth. Like they needed to score that touchdown there in that situation. They're the underdog. I think maybe Sharon Moore was just kind of hoping that Ryan Day would, give a Ryan Day special here and just blow the game and, play down to Michigan's level here. And maybe that was the thought process, because a year ago, they win that game like 13-10. So, it did matter, but it was just a different Ohio State game plan. It was clear that they were on a mission. They win the game 27-9. It wasn't total obliteration by any means, but Bryce Underwood only 63 yards passing. I mean, they only had 163 total yards to 419. So definitely, I think the score probably could have been even worse in this one. But Ohio State gets it done. They stamped their ticket. They got a game between them and Indiana next week that we've kind of been all talking about for the last, I think, 6 weeks. So looking forward to that one. And then Michigan officially out of it. They have bigger picture things. I don't know what's going on with Sharon Moore. I'm down on him. I think most of Michigan fan base is. Probably can't pull the trigger now. Maybe we kick the candle next year, but gotta be disappointed. I know they weren't supposed to be this great team this year, but it just felt like they were the easiest team to predict going 9-3. I think in August. I think we just all knew Michigan was going to go 9-3, and here they are with the loss. Ohio State though finally gets it done. So big win for them. They needed that one.
Yeah, the Bryce Underwood hype really tailed off there as it got later into the season, paying him all those millions of dollars and got him. Could have been an LSU and would have been a disaster. But, it's just funny. Yeah, I think this Michigan team, like you said, so predictable, so easy to, predict. They're just, the defense was good, not great this year. I thought they had a really good defense last year. I think they were just still trying to do things like they were last year. And the offense just really couldn't get going. I mean, you get the 5-star kid, bring them in, pay millions of dollars, and you're still only getting 6 yards passing. Now, I know it was a little snowy. It was a little not the best weather conditions, but Ohio State was tearing it up, and they really proved their mettle there. I kind of was I was on Michigan, obviously, in the game. Went up 6-0, and kind of like you said, once they're kicking those field goals, I was like, this is a different Ohio State offense, and if they start opening up with the pass game, you're not going to be able to hold them down that long. But it started off perfect. It really was. And that's where I'm going to go give a lot of credit to Ohio State, because it started off so poorly on the road and with the interception. I think they tried to run it in like 6 times on the goal line on their first attempt, and then they ended up kicking a field goal themselves, Ohio State. And I'm like, oh, no, here we go. I'm like, they're trying to overpower them. They're trying to be physical. They're playing right into Michigan's hands. And then second, third, fourth quarter, they really got back to what they do best, which is throwing the ball downfield, letting Julian Sand rip it to those receivers. The receivers definitely were a little banged up, but played a really good game and battled there. Their run defense is still not great, Ohio State. It's going to be a great test against Indiana, like you said, coming up. So the eyes will definitely be on that game. And their run game itself wasn't, overly amazing. So they really do rely on that pass game, but the defense does have so many dudes all around. They really showed their mettle there. Even when Michigan had those short fields, they still held them to field goals, which is really impressive. So I got to give a lot of credit to Ohio State there, because it was kind of looking early on case like I was like, oh, here we go again. Michigan's going to win. This is crazy. And then they shut that down. I think outscored them 27-3 in the final 3 quarters. So got to give Ohio State and Ryan Day a lot of credit.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think that there's still some questions surrounding them. I think Indiana game will tell us a lot, or even after that, when they go and actually get to the playoff and play a team outside the Big Ten. What do they actually look like against a Georgia team or whatever, or A&M, or any of these SEC games? Maybe we'll see Alabama play there. But yeah, and the spread, by the way, only 5.5 next week in Indianapolis. So interesting number. If you like that, you could get on that early. Tickets, by the way, are through the roof. It's funny. It's like it's a game that in a way doesn't matter, because like it's kind of unfortunate, and it's just what you said. We could have a whole episode on the state of college football right now, but like the winner of this game, the loser gets probably everything that the winner gets. They probably get the first round bye still. I don't think they drop more. So it's like, what are you really getting? And then if you want to compare it to the NFL, then it's like, do you want to sit starters in this game? Like what, do you really get? I don't like, that's not going to happen. I think these are two teams that want to win, but it is an interesting argument that I think is becoming louder. Like, and I think the more we do the playoff the exact same way and the conference championships where it's not very clear, like, what are you really getting? It is going to start opening those questions more. Like, is it worth it to play in this game if, the loser stays at 2 or they drop to 3 and you still get the bye? You're just playing a whole nother game, a very tough physical game. I mean, this is a huge game. Would be the BCS national championship. If it was 20 years ago, this game, you get the 1 and 2 team at the last game of the season. So it is funny, but clearly there's still energy around this. The tickets are through the roof. It's going to be sold out. It's going to be a great game, I think. And both sides are going to fight hard to win this game. And Indiana, huge opportunity. I mean, imagine for them being number 1 in the country, beating Ohio State to go, the number 1 overall seed. This is their biggest game in school history, I think. But it is an interesting situation with once again the whole system and like, what does the winner really get if we're still also rewarding the loser for no punishment for losing.
Yeah, and that's what we saw a little bit last year too. And it's like, yeah, do you even want to play in the conference championship games? I'm a believer. Again, maybe you got to change our ways and what we've been doing. Maybe eliminate conference championship games. And I know it'll take away a whole thing. And I know the Notre Dame fan doesn't want conference championships, but it's like, I think it would make more sense because, like you're saying, like, yeah, what's the point in playing this game or to the level now? Usually, conference championships don't have 1 and 2 seeds overall in the standings, so maybe it's just a one-off type scenario. So then, if you were on like that 3-4 line, well, then you're playing for a bye versus not playing for a bye, which is definitely something that I think every football team would love to have right now, some extra time off. But it does raise the questions, like, yeah, like with being 1 and 2 right now, right? How much does it really win each other? Is the 2 seed really going to drop back? Would Ohio State drop back out of the bye? I guess that's what you're kind of playing for, the unknown. Like, you don't know exactly what it's going to be. So, what if some teams move up into the 3-4, then you get bounced to 5? So I think that's a little bit, you could still play for the unknown factor. But again, just another topic. We might have to write some of these topics down. We could do a whole episode on it, but that's another great discussion point. And, maybe one day we'll get to a point where we don't play conference championships because of the whole seeding and the 12-team playoff, or maybe we'll be at 24, 30 teams by that point. I don't know, but it's a very interesting topic again.
Yeah. If it was up to the TV networks, we'd have, I think, 60 or 70 teams in it. So, all right, going on to the ACC, Miami, 10-2, 6-2 in the ACC. They miss out on the ACC championship game, which just throwing more chaos at this whole process with Duke getting in because of SMU's failure to beat Cal. But Miami, they needed to go into Pittsburgh and look good and win. They did that. They covered the spread. It wasn't, like you said, kind of in the intro, it wasn't a total domination game, but they beat them. They beat them handily, 416 total yards to 230. Also a game that it was just never really in question. Miami was up 17-7 by halftime, took an early 24-7 in the third quarter, and it just, they never really looked back from that point. Got to be disappointed if you're Pittsburgh. Of course, I was very high on them in this game. I called it in August. Miami would just, continue to be a disappointment. They lose to Louisville. They lost again, and they lost that game against SMU. And it just seems like everything was off the tracks. They kind of are salvaging it a little bit. They're doing their best, but at this point, I just think it's too little, too late. I know there's a huge conversation, and better than anyone, Jared, about Notre Dame, Miami. What do they do? But at this point, it was clear to me as a fan of neither that Notre Dame has been 2-3 spots consistently above them. I cannot imagine a scenario where they all of a sudden flip that on the final ranking. I think that would cause, if they were going to do it, I think they would have done it by now. As long as there's that buffer, as long as Alabama or some other teams between them, I don't think we're going to get a shock like that. But I understand the frustration if you're Miami. You have a solid point. You looked good last week. You looked good again this week, but you looked terrible against Louisville on that Friday. You looked terrible against SMU. And this goes back to this whole other argument. If you're sitting between 10 and 15, I really just don't want to hear we should be in over this team, because it's like any other year, you wouldn't even have a chance. You wouldn't be close. You'd be going to the Pop-Tarts Bowl right now. So at least they're in the hunt here. They did what they needed to do, though. They got the win. We'll see how it all shakes out, but it looks like right now, and if you look at DraftKings and all these other odds, that they're probably going to be out of the playoff.
Yeah, and I'll admit I'm a big Miami hater. Like, I'll just get that out front. I don't like them, and but I will give them credit in this game. They did look good. They did what they needed to do. They came out, like you said, with a purpose. Right from the jump, they jumped out. I think they had 2 3-and-outs to start the game. The defensive line, very good. And like I said about this Miami team, we broke it down. Like, they have some spots where they do have some elite talent. They are very good. Like, the D line has some guys that are going to get drafted first round. The offensive line is very good in pass protection. Malachi Tony is one of the best receivers in the country. Now, are they too Malachi Tony reliant? Because I swear he had like 13 catches and no one else had any catch. They still can't really run the ball. Carson Beck, you still don't really trust him against an elite defense. I don't think Pittsburgh had as an elite defense as we would consider. You could run on Miami a little bit, which I think Pitt, they got behind a little bit, couldn't really run the ball. And the way they play their structure, they do a lot of not heavy personnel, so just a lot of 5 offensive linemen, which I kind of should have saw that before the matchup. I just really wanted them to lose. But it was a good matchup for Miami going into this game, just getting those pass rushers out in front. But yeah, like you said, I just don't see them as that elite tier. I still think they're missing some holes. If you put them up against, some of those teams in the top 10, I think it would not look too pretty for Miami, but they're going to be complaining. They're going to be, doing whatever. Now, do I honestly think that, some teams should be rated higher than Notre Dame or some of these other teams in the top, 11, 12? Like, yes, I do. But I'm not on the committee, and I don't decide what happens in the committee. That's their job to do. I know it's a broken process, but I don't see Miami, putting a scare into anybody in the playoff. Should they be deserving of it? That's a debate. Like, I don't know. And like you said, I really don't think that SMU loss helps them either, because if SMU was in the AC championship, they win it. Okay, now we lost the AC championship, or now we lost to the ACC champion. Now they lose that game. They're out as 14-point favorites. Now that loss looks bad, even worse. And the Louisville one got way worse with them losing a couple games. So the losses have not looked good for Miami. That's something that their fans do not talk about online, but all they want to talk about is the 3-point win that they almost blew to Notre Dame when they played their worst game of the season. So hopefully it's the last time we talk about Miami, but we will definitely be having the discussions probably going forward online and seeing on the shows. They'll be asking the commissioner a bunch of questions, and the commissioner has no idea what he's doing. And, the committee is a joke overall, and we know that. But yeah, really impressive, though. Got to give Miami their flowers here in the last couple games. They did play well. They did play with a purpose, but I think you summed it up perfect case. Little, too late. Like, you can't just turn it on now and look good. You got to play a totality of the season, and you can't slip up against 2 unranked teams in the ACC that we know the ACC is very down and not good.
Yeah, and I don't want to hear the argument, by the way, from all the haters out there of the playoff saying, well, because of the expanded playoff, none of these games mean anything anymore. You could lose all these games, 1, 2, 3. It doesn't look like it, because right now there are like 5, 6 teams with 2 losses. You have Texas 9-3 who just beat A&M that look like they're all about to miss the playoff unless something crazy happens. And either way, we're going to have 2 lost teams that don't get in here. So clearly those games mattered, and that SMU loss and Louisville, whatever one you want to pick, will be the reason why Miami will be left out if that is the case next week. So but yeah, too little too late. We'll see what happens. It was a good game. They did what they needed to do the last couple of weeks, but those early season losses and disappointing, they were heavy favorites in both those games, will, I think, come back to haunt them there. Also, another game, we'll roll right into it. Vanderbilt 45, Tennessee 24. Vandy kind of making things interesting this last week too, getting a big win over Tennessee on the road. They were, I think, above, or they were just behind Miami this last ranking, but now you're sitting at 10-2. They did what they needed to do the last few weeks. They had a very dominating performance, 579 total yards in this one. It might just be too little too late for Vandy. Also, there are 2 losses, great losses on the road at Alabama and at Texas. Like, they're not bad losses at all. They, were getting killed by Texas. They fought back into it. They still came up short, but it looks like Vanderbilt, a similar situation, is going to be just on the outside looking in. But nonetheless, it was a great game. They got a win over an in-state rival. A lot of people weren't picking them to win this game despite the season they had, but they came out with a mission. They look good doing it, and their offense has been cooking here the last few weeks. I'm just looking at their schedule, 45 points in each of their last 3 games in the SEC: Tennessee, Kentucky, Auburn. So they had a great season, probably their best season on record, but I still looks like they're just going to be a little bit short for the playoff.
Yeah, the offense was on fire, and that was definitely the case here. Tennessee could not stop them. Got to give a lot of credit to Diego Pavia. I think he should get some more Heisman votes and hopefully gets to New York to sit there. But I think it's a great point off the top, Case. Like, there should be an argument. Maybe Vanderbilt should be higher than Miami, and that's not something that no one's really talking about. It's only what generates the buzz and everything. But I think Vanderbilt's very deserving of being higher. I think even they should be very close to Notre Dame and even higher than Notre Dame with that resume and that gauntlet that they went through being in the SEC. And like you said, their 2 losses are decent losses where it's closer. They battled, could have won the one in Alabama. Definitely got outplayed, and this final score looks a little bit better than the Texas one. But yeah, this team definitely is definitely shown that they have some elite skill. They have some elite talent. Clark Lee just signed that extension there, which I think was awesome for him and the Vanderbilt school there to show some consistency. And I think they're going to be a solid team for years to come. I don't think this is just a little bump, just a year 1 or 2. Like, I think this could be a program that could be very close or competing or taking that next step in the SEC. So just add another school to that deep SEC roster we talk about every year. But on the Tennessee side, quickly too, just disappointing again. Like, you thought maybe they could spoil, they were favorites in this one actually by 2.5, 3 points. And it was close early on, but then really just showed their colors. So Tennessee, again, another disappointing kind of season, 4 losses now on the year. So this one could have been maybe some momentum. They could have won this game, spoiled Vanderbilt's chances, but really just didn't really show up to play. So Tennessee still has a lot of questions to answer. And Vanderbilt, like you said, even if they miss the playoff, still have a lot of great things going for them. I think that's going to be a program to look out for in the next couple of years.
Yeah, they're definitely building something there. And Clark Lee, big shout out to him, got his extension because of all these coaching jobs openings. A lot of these on the bubble guys in the Power 4 that we're looking to maybe move up to a bigger school. They're definitely deservedly getting some credit here. So big win for Vanderbilt. We'll see how it all shakes out in the committee, but nonetheless, can't take away from a great season for them. We'll close it out here with the Iron Bowl. Was a good one. As always, Alabama gets the win 27-20. Very strange game. Bama was up 17-0 in this game. It kind of looked like Auburn had nothing going for them. They come fighting back. They come storming back. They tie the game late in the fourth quarter, 20-20. Alabama takes the lead again. Auburn goes down the field. We know the big turnover. They fumbled the football and then really never, had a shot after that. Looking at the total yards, they actually outgained Alabama by over 100 yards, 411 to 280. Alabama on the other side, though, had the time of possession. So just a strange game, but it feels like Kalen DeBoer needed this win for him and his security at Alabama, winning that fan base over. I mean, there was a lot of rumors, and I'm not just trying to create rumors, but I know that, Penn State, Pat Graff, there was even rumors about them pursuing DeBoer and, actual discussions. And then, that looks like that door now officially shut now that, they have a SEC championship to play for next week. But just craziness surrounding them. Auburn, we knew it would be their Super Bowl this season. They were 5-6. We know they could have made a bowl game, but it really wasn't about that for them. It was about playing spoiler, knocking Alabama out. Just seems like it's always a great game between these two. Would be definitely on a bucket list of mine to attend one day. But Alabama gets it done, much needed. They can breathe out. They look like they'll be in, but if they lose the SEC championship, will the committee, we don't know. Maybe they get moved out with that loss, with 3 losses. So it's something we haven't seen yet, but could happen. And they got a game to play, essentially a playoff game next week against Georgia.
Yeah, weird game, I think, is a good way to describe this one. Like you said, you look at the box score. I got to watch this game late at night here. It was a good one to end the Saturday on under the lights there in Jordan-Hare. But, yeah, I thought Auburn, like we said, kind of should have covered this game. They were in it except for that horrendous start where they went down 17-0. Ty Simpson also got banged up a little bit in this game. I felt like he was getting hit hard on some of these throws. He was down a little bit. So they definitely paid a price for this one. 3.8 yards per play for Alabama, which is really not good for that offense and what they've been doing. I thought Auburn really shut them down and really limited them. 122 yards passing. They really got after Ty Simpson, too. They were in the backfield all night. Alabama did run the ball a little bit, which some they weren't doing great all season for 158 on the ground. So it was a game that was kind of all over the place with stuff you were expecting Ty Simpson, that pass game, to torch the Auburn secondary, but that didn't really happen. And then we weren't expecting Alabama to run for that much. We thought Auburn's pass game was going to be the struggle in this one, but they still threw for 259, had a decent day. Ashton Daniels did end up playing in this one. He played decent. I thought he played okay. Definitely had some blunders there in the first quarter, looked a little nervous, but then once he settled in, He was able to scramble around a little bit too and make some plays. So kind of played out like a true Alabama game this year for them in 2025, where it's ugly, it's back and forth, it's super tight, and then they make a key play. That final drive at the end was very impressive. They marched all the way down the field, had a couple key third downs, I think even a couple fourth downs. I think maybe definitely one, maybe two on that final drive. And, that's tough to do in enemy territory at night there, tie ball game. So they have that metal where if it's tight, they feel comfortable. Ty Simpson's a gamer. Kalen DeBoer is very comfortable calling tight games. So they definitely have that quality. So it's going to be interesting, but it's just something that you don't want to rely on or have to have happen week in and week out, because it is a little dicey. And then if you make one mistake, like what happened in the Oklahoma game, you could end up losing by a point or two. So they've been on a thin line, but they definitely been showing that more times than not, they do find a way to win, which is a scary thing to back come playoff time here. But going to see, like you said, if they lose that Georgia game, that could be another microcosm. What we were talking about, is it beneficial to play a conference championship? Because you're right, Oklahoma, Ole Miss aren't in the game, but now they don't have to worry about not getting kicked out because they should be in. Alabama's, weirdly enough, actually does have the thought of maybe getting kicked out with a loss here. So that's just something that I just don't like seeing. I wouldn't like to see it. Now, Notre Dame is very close to them, so I'm kind of rooting for that. But as a general, college football fan, I think that's not fair. But we will see what happens here and see how it plays out. But I think it still should be a great game between Alabama and Georgia. With the way those two teams have been going, it's probably going to come down to last possession and be super close. So that'll be a fun one.
Yeah, it's always a fun one between those two. And with that, might as well get right into it just quickly on the playoff. And I know we're over an hour, but Paisley, I'm gonna say just quickly. So I have eight teams that are automatically in, I think.
Okay.
And if you disagree on anything, let me know, or thoughts or anything. But I got 8 teams that are in. No matter what happens, they're safe. It's Ohio State, Indiana, Georgia, Oregon, Texas Tech, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, and Oklahoma. They'd be the 8 according to the polls. And I'm honestly even just trying to walk through this because it's so confusing sometimes seeing it with the different auto bids and what results could change things. So I have those 8 in. Essentially, we'll leave 4 spots that are up for grabs / presumably in unless results change. But I would have at 9, I would have if UVA wins the ACC, they'd be the 11 seed. So They would be 11th. So that would leave just 9, 10, and 12. And then assuming Alabama, let's say, wins, or actually we could even say if Alabama loses, then I would probably say that Notre Dame would be the 9, Alabama would be the 10 if they lose or win. That's a question mark, but let's say the committee doesn't punish them if they lose, they would be the 10, and then the group of 5 would be the 12. So would be Tulane. So that would be the top 12 if Notre Dame doesn't get punished or moved out, if Alabama stays in with the loss, if Virginia wins the ACC, they're definitely in, I guess, at 11 because they wouldn't jump up high. But essentially, if all that happens, that would leave out BYU and Miami. So the craziness, and I have it on the notes here, is if BYU wins, I don't know what happens. That's where it gets crazy, because if BYU beats Texas Tech, I still have Texas. I counted Texas Tech as auto in.
Yeah.
I don't think there's no way they remove them. So then it's like, that's where it would be becoming very interesting for Alabama and Notre Dame, because if BYU wins, that would take off a spot. So if Alabama loses, then I assume BYU's in over Alabama. That would be my thought. And I only say that because they currently, I think, have Notre Dame above Alabama in the last ranking. So that could be a huge ranking for Notre Dame to stay in over Alabama.
Yeah, and that's everyone's going Notre Dame, Miami. I think you might be honest. It might be Notre Dame, Alabama potentially that might be dueling for the last spot there. But yeah, you said it. I think it's going to come down to like those 4 teams you said: Notre Dame, Alabama, BYU, Miami, maybe Vanderbilt if you want to throw them in there. But I think they're even still behind Miami, even though I think they should be ranked higher. So yeah, I think we're assuming BYU's out, and then like you said, I think it's kind of 3 teams for 2 spots with Notre Dame, Alabama, Miami. Thinking that the group of 5, and let's just assume Virginia is in, or even if Virginia doesn't win, then it'll maybe group of 5 teams, or maybe open up another at large. Maybe that's Miami's way of sneaking in. We don't really know the full scenarios or exactly how it's going to go, but Yeah, I think that Alabama-Georgia game is going to be very key for Alabama, especially because if they win, definitely in. If not, then maybe does it become even a question of Alabama-Miami then? Is whose resume is better? Even with the SC championship loss, do they still put Alabama above Miami, which I think everybody would agree, yes. But then everybody would want the discussion to be Notre Dame, Miami. But I think you're right with Notre Dame being ranked ahead of Alabama these last couple of weeks, which was surprising. And I don't think that should be right. It's definitely that might not even become a factor with the Notre Dame, Miami. I think they're kind of building in that buffer. And then, like you said, the biggest crazy scenario would be BYU winning. That would just shake up a lot of things, and then probably would kick probably Notre Dame out. Honestly, I think if if they win the SEC championship, then it'd be BYU and Alabama getting those last two spots. So, yeah, I think those four teams from 9 to 12 right now in the rankings, they're going to decide those last couple spots. And at the end of the day, there's just not enough spots. There's 4 spots. It'd be easy or even 3, but it looks like there's only 2. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this shakes out. And it's going to be up for debate for sure for a lot of fan bases in the next coming weeks.
It's definitely going to be whatever team is the first one out and the second one, it's going to be absolute chaotic at those schools. And then, definitely BYU has the biggest thing to shake things up. And then one more quick point I wanted to make on the committee is if Duke were to win the ACC, I think, unless you think otherwise, I don't think they're in. They won't be ranked at 8 and 5.
I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think. Yeah,
I wouldn't think. Let me actually quickly pull up the last the AP poll today. If Duke got any votes, that could give us an indication of if any voter. No, so then Duke doesn't even have a vote. So not one AP voter even had them 25th in the ranking in the latest poll. So. I would imagine an 8 and 5 Duke ACC champion, I would assume, is out, and then that would really open the door for James Madison is in getting in the playoff. Could have a situation where we have 2 group of 5 teams because there would be no automatic qualifier for the ACC. The current rule is the top 5 conference champions get an auto bid. So if James Madison works their way in, even if it's 25th in the poll this week or next week after the conference championship, that could put the Tulane in, and that could put James Madison in at 11 and 12, which I don't think many people want to see, but it's just some of the craziness that could happen with that. So just absolute, chaos, a few different scenarios that could pan out here. That just trying to figure out here in the last week. I thought we would honestly have some more clarity, and it just doesn't seem like we do.
Yeah, like we didn't get crazy upsets, but that's what I'm saying. Like there's just not a lot of clarity. And who would have thought that now we got to really look at the number 23, 24, and 25 teams potentially, because I think they really could decide a spot. And then we have all this Miami, Notre Dame fans going back, Alabama, BYU. And then we might get 2 group of 5 teams, which would just be the funniest outcome in all this. So we could have all this bickering back and forth. And then we could be sitting there watching JMU and North Texas or Tulane in the playoffs. So that'd be funny.
I'm going to go right into the winner and loser because it's a great segment. My loser, Paisley, is the ACC conference this week. That was my loser as a whole. SMU, I'm really looking at you for losing to Cal, really giving us the situation where we've talked about Duke getting in at like 8 and 4. Now they're not in, but they're playing in the ACC championship game at 7 and 5. That just shouldn't happen. There's so many things wrong with the playoff, and I don't want to completely just say it's all awful and needs to be rebuilt. It doesn't, but the pieces that are unclear, we have to figure out. We have to figure out a way where a 7 and 5 Duke's not playing for a conference championship. We have to make it clear that they're not a playoff team and they're not going to be taking a spot from 10 and 2 Vanderbilt or 10 and 2 Miami or 10 and 2 Notre Dame. That it should be clear, I think, with 7 days left in the season. So ACC top to bottom, loser of the week, just really overall for not being a good conference. Miami disappointing. I might as well just take this moment to also shit on Clemson again. Absolute disappointment for a season for Clemson. ACC preseason champion, didn't even end in the top 25, really struggled all year. And I know, Penn State same way for the Big Ten, but this is about the ACC right now. So loser of the week, really loser of the season. We'll see how it shakes out, but they better hope Duke does not win that game next week.
Yeah, I'm just really just for the memes and everything purpose wise. I'd hope Duke wins because that'd be funny. And my loser of the week case also ties along. I just put SMU in general. So all
There
your
we go.
points you laid out there. SMU had the clear path. They go out to the road, 14-point favorites. I thought that line was inflated. And then they go out there and lay an egg. So yeah, ACC overall, like we joked about, but might need to become a realization. Let's maybe move them to the group of 5. And those Miami fans that want to complain, like that is the worst conference by far, and you couldn't even make the conference championship game. So that's a problem.
Yeah. Great loser of the week. SMU, just total disappointment for them. Had an easy opportunity to punch their ticket and they dropped the ball. My winner of the week, it was tough. There were, like I said in the beginning, there were a lot of winners. I think this week, just all the rivalry games from top to bottom. But I went with Texas. I gave them their credit this week. I was down on them at a couple points this season, especially with that Kentucky performance, and almost losing to Mississippi State, and didn't look good at all. Preseason number 1, really disappointed, but they came to life here. They got to win. It's probably the biggest rivalry win. I didn't want to give it to Ohio State, so got to give it to Texas. Huge win. I know they're probably out of the playoff, but just talking about this week, they ruined A&M season. I know those fan bases. That fan base really wanted that win. Undefeated would have been, arguably their biggest win in recent history, at least that I could recall. So couldn't get it done. Texas upset them. They beat them. They got the win, and good for Steve Sarkisian because I think he needed it too, just based off of the temperature of that program this year.
Yeah, and I saw something too. I think Texas A&M last beat Texas since 2011. Now, I know they didn't play some years because of the whole going to SEC, and there was some stuff there, but it has been a while, I think, since the little brother, as they call Texas A&M, beat Texas. So you really thought this was going to be the year. So, right, I do feel bad for Texas A&M fans there, but good for Texas. My winner case, we're going to go Conference USA. I'm going to shout out both teams that made the title game there. First with Kennesaw State. The Owls are going to the conference championship game. They were 2-10 last year. They were 1-10 going in the last game. That's when they upset Liberty as like 28-point underdogs. So this is their third year in FBS Division One. They moved up from the D1AA rank. So huge turnaround. I'm not sure who the coach is, but huge shout out to him for turning that program around. Thank you for that. But they are now in the conference title game and have a good chance to win. It's a very close spread going up against Jacksonville State. Now, Jacksonville State was in the conference championship last year with Rich Rodriguez, actually, now at the West Virginia Mountaineers. But they lost him. They got their roster gutted. They, I think, were projected 4 or 5 wins, bottom of the conference, and they had a great turnaround in one season. So it does prove that even when everybody leaves, they clean house, you could still bounce back. And then shout out Kennesaw, the Owls here for coming up to the big leagues here and making a big push, getting to the conference championship game. But that should be a fun one in a league that's been really terrible this year. Conference USA, it's been wild and chaotic. But I'm excited to see those two teams in and turn around those programs very quickly.
I love it. Yeah, giving Conference USA some flowers. Definitely didn't have Kennesaw State on my radar. So good way to close out the regular season. I guess with that, we'll be back here midweek at some point, breaking down the conference championships week. We'll do a whole breakdown on the playoff then on Sunday. So yeah, we appreciate everybody. YouTube, X, Spotify, and we will see you later in the week.